Commander Thelzon stared at his monitor screen with confusion. The numbers made no sense. His four eyes blinked rapidly as he checked the readings again. Something massive was moving through space toward the neutral border zone, and it was traveling impossibly fast. This must be broken, he muttered to himself. Thalzin had been working at Monitoring Station 7 for 20 years. He had seen asteroids, comets, and old space debris, but he had never seen anything like this. The energy signature on his screen was enormous. It was bigger than a moon, and it was moving at speeds that should be physically impossible. Any ship traveling that fast would tear itself apart. The friction and energy would destroy it within seconds. Thelzan was about to file a maintenance report when his communication panel lit up. 3 other monitoring stations were calling him at the same time. His scales turned pale with worry. Station 7, are you seeing this? A panicked voice asked through the speaker. Station 12 confirms the anomaly. Another voice added. Station 19 has visual confirmation. Whatever this is, it's real. Alzan felt his blood run cold. If 4 different stations were detecting the same thing, it was not a malfunction. Something was really out there. Something big. Within minutes, the alert reached Imperial Command. The massive golden tower at the center of the capital planet lit up with emergency lights. Alarms rang through the corridors as military officers rushed to their positions. Admiral. Kevron was in his private quarters when the call came. He was an old warrior with silver scales and countless battle scars. He had served the Galactic Empire for 70 years and had seen many wars. But the fear in the young officer's voice made him move faster than he had in decades. Admiral, you need to see this immediately, the officer said. Minutes later, Kevron stood in the Imperial war room. Dozens of scientists and military commanders surrounded a massive holographic display. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of their sector of space. And there, moving toward their territory, was a red dot. What am I looking at? Kevron demanded. A scientist named Dr. Ventel stepped forward. Her hands were shaking as she manipulated the hologram. Admiral, this object appeared at the edge of our sensor range 6 hours ago. It was traveling at 0.9 light speed. That alone should be impossible. Should be? Kevron growled. It gets worse, sir. The object is now decelerating. Our calculations show it's heading directly toward our core systems, and its size. Dr. Ventel paused, her voice barely a whisper. It's 47 kilometers long. The room fell silent. The Empire's largest warships were barely 5 kilometers long. This thing was almost 10 times bigger. Check the database, Kevron ordered. Find out what civilization this belongs to. Imperial database contained information on every known species and civilization in the galaxy. It had records going back 50,000 years. If someone had built a ship this size, there would be records. But after 30 minutes of searching, the technicians found nothing. Admiral, there's no match, a young officer reported. No known civilization has technology like this. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our files. Kevron felt something he had not felt in many years. Fear. He had fought in 100 battles. He had faced pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens. But those were enemies he understood. This was something completely unknown. Convene the Imperial Council immediately, he ordered, and get me our best military analysts. I want options. As the war room emptied, a junior analyst named Lyra stayed behind. She was young, with bright green scales and curious eyes. While others panicked, she was digging through old files on her personal console. Sir? She called out nervously. I think I found something. Kevron turned to her. Speak. I was searching through restricted historical files. There are some very old records, sealed about 12,000 years ago. They mention something called a ghost fleet, from a dead zone of space. The files are heavily encrypted, but I managed to access a summary. What does it say? Lyra's hands trembled as she read from her screen. It mentions ships that were never supposed to exist, built by a civilization that was supposedly extinct. The file is labeled Humanity Protocol, Level 9 Classification. Before Kevron could respond, every alarm in the Imperial Command building started blaring. The massive holographic display in the war room activated by itself. Officers came running back into the room. The unknown object had dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was now visible to their long-range cameras. The image appeared on the screen, and everyone in the room gasped. The ship was enormous. Its hull was dark gray, covered in strange angular armor. Weapons arrays lined its sides, though none were active. The design was unlike anything in Imperial records. It looked both ancient and impossibly advanced at the same time. Then everyone noticed the markings on the hull. Strange symbols in a language that seemed familiar, but impossibly old. The computer struggled to translate them. Admiral Kavran stepped closer to the screen. His experienced eyes studied every detail of the massive vessel. "What are those symbols?" Dr. Ventel was typing frantically. "Sir, the computer recognizes the language. It's pre-Imperial script. From before the Empire was founded. But that's impossible. Those civilizations are all gone." Suddenly, every communication system in Imperial Command activated at once. A voice came through, speaking in perfect Imperial Standard language. It was calm, clear, and completely unexpected. "This is the human vessel Perseverance to Imperial Command. We request permission to dock for diplomatic negotiations. We mean no harm. We come in peace, but we bring an urgent warning. Please respond." The room erupted in chaos. Officers shouted at each other. Scientists argued about impossible translations. But Admiral Kavran stood frozen, staring at the massive ship on the screen. Humanity. That was a name he had never heard spoken aloud. A name from sealed files and forbidden history. A name that should not exist. Because according to every official record, humanity had been extinct for 12,000 years. Yet there it was. A ship 47 kilometers long. Impossibly advanced. Completely real. And it was waiting for an answer. Imperial Command panicked. Part 2. The Forbidden Species. The Imperial Council Chamber was designed to project power and authority. Golden pillars reached toward a domed ceiling painted with images of ancient conquests. Normally, the council met once a month to discuss trade agreements and minor territorial disputes. Today, all 50 council members had been summoned within an hour. They were terrified. Humanity. Council leader Vexler slammed his fist on the marble table. That name has been forbidden for 12,000 years. How can they be here? Admiral Kavran stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by arguing politicians. His military uniform looked plain compared to their elaborate robes, but his presence commanded respect. "I don't know how, council leader, but that ship is real. It's waiting at the border, and it's not going away. Could it be a trick?" a council member suggested. "Perhaps rebels using an old name to frighten us." No. The word came from the back of the chamber. An elderly figure shuffled forward, his scales faded with age. This was historian Zelmar, keeper of the Empire's sealed archives. He was so old that most council members had forgotten he existed. Zelmar. Vexler looked surprised. "Why have you come?" "Because you spoke a forbidden name." His voice was weak, but steady. "And because I am the only one alive who knows the truth about humanity." The council chamber fell silent. Even Admiral Kavran leaned forward to listen. Zelmar activated a small holographic projector. Ancient images filled the air above the council table. They showed star charts, battle reports, and images of a species that looked strange and soft compared to the scaled and armored races of the Empire. Humanity, Zelmar began, was part of the pre-Imperial alliance. Before our ancestors united the galaxy under one rule, there were dozens of independent civilizations. Most accepted Imperial authority peacefully. They saw the benefits of unity, protection, and shared resources. But humans refused, Zelmar continued. They were a young species, barely 3,000 years old. But they were stubborn. They valued something they called independence more than safety. They refused to surrender their freedom, even when the Imperial fleet surrounded their worlds. Zelmar's hologram showed images of war, fleets clashing in space, planets burning. The war lasted 50 years. Humans were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. They should have been crushed within months. But they kept fighting. They were clever and adaptable in ways we had never seen. Finally, the Empire committed its full military might. Every ship, every soldier. The orders were clear: complete elimination. No survivors. No mercy. Zelmar's voice grew heavy with sadness. And we succeeded. Or so we believed. The human worlds went silent. Their ships disappeared. After 500 years of silence, humanity was declared extinct. The war was so brutal that the Empire sealed all records, forbidding anyone to speak of it. Admiral Kavruna's mind was racing. But they survived. Apparently, yes, Zelmar said. And if they built that ship, they've been preparing for 12,000 years. Council leader Vexther stood up. Then we destroy them now, before they can threaten us. With what? Kevron shot back. That ship is 10 times larger than anything we have. Its technology allowed it to travel at impossible speeds. We don't even know what weapons it carries. Then what do you suggest, Admiral? Kavron thought carefully. We talk to them. Find out what they want. Why reveal themselves now after so long? Absolutely not, another council member shouted. Showing weakness will only encourage them. The argument continued for hours. Finally, Kevron made a decision. I'm deploying the second battle fleet. 200 warships will surround the human vessel. They won't be allowed to dock. But we'll open a diplomatic channel. We need information. 3 hours later, the Imperial second battle fleet arrived at the border zone. Admiral Kavron commanded from the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Fist. It was the pride of the Empire. Covered in weapons and shields developed over thousands of years, but as Kevron looked at the view screen showing the human Dreadnought, his flagship seemed tiny. The Perseverance floated silently in space, its massive hull reflecting starlight. It had made no aggressive moves. All its weapons remained inactive. It simply waited. Open a channel, Kavron ordered. The view screen changed, showing the bridge of the human ship. It looked strange to Imperial eyes. Where their bridges were decorated with gold and symbols of power, the human bridge was plain and functional. Screens covered the walls. Officers in simple uniforms worked at their stations, and in the center stood human woman. She was smaller than Kevron expected. Humans had no scales, no natural armor, no claws. They looked fragile. But the woman's eyes were sharp and intelligent. She wore a dark blue uniform with symbols that Kevron didn't recognize. I am Captain Maria Santos of the human vessel Perseverance, she said. Her voice was calm but firm. Thank you for opening communications, Admiral Kavron. Kavron was surprised she knew his name. How do you know who I am? Santos smiled slightly. We've been watching the Empire for a very long time, Admiral. We know your fleet compositions, your trade routes, your political structure. We've observed everything from hidden colonies scattered across the galaxy. Spying, Kavron said coldly. Surviving, Santos corrected. After your Empire tried to exterminate us, we learned to be careful. We stayed hidden. We built our strength in secret. We waited. Waited for what? Santos's expression turned serious. For the right moment to reveal ourselves. And that moment is now. Admiral, I'm not here to threaten the Empire. I'm here to save it. Kevron leaned forward. Explain. Your Empire has been expanding aggressively for the past century. You've been pushing into regions of space that were previously unexplored. 3 months ago, your scout ships entered Sector 447. Do you know what they found? Empty space, Kevron said. Old nebulas and dead planets. Wrong. Santos touched a control panel. The view screen split, showing Kevron what appeared to be sensor data. Your scouts woke something up. Something that has been sleeping for 1,000,000 years. We call them the Vex Swarm. The images showed biomechanical creatures. Ships that looked alive, covered in organic armor and mechanical weapons. There were thousands of them, maybe millions, all dormant in deep space. The Vex are a hive intelligence, Santos explained. They consume entire civilizations, absorbing their technology and biomass. 1,000,000 years ago, something defeated them and put them into hibernation. But your Empire's energy emissions woke them up. Kevron felt his scales go cold. How do you know this? Because we've been studying them for 5 years. We discovered them before you did. We've been preparing, building weapons, training crews. But we can't stop them alone, and neither can you. Why should I believe you? Kevron demanded. Santos's expression was grim. Because in approximately 6 months, the Vex will fully awaken. And when they do, they'll sweep through this entire sector of the galaxy. They'll consume everything in their path. Your empire, our colonies, every living being, unless we work together. She paused, letting her words sink in. You have 24 hours to decide, Admiral? Cooperation or extinction? We'll be waiting for your answer. The communication ended. The view screen returned to showing the Perseverance floating silently in space. Admiral Kevron sat back in his command chair, his mind spinning. Could he trust humans after 12,000 years? Could he trust anyone making such impossible claims? But deep in his warrior's heart, he knew one thing was certain. That human captain wasn't lying. He had seen too many battles, stared into too many enemies' eyes. Captain Santos believed every word she said, and that terrified him more than anything else. Imperial Command panicked. Part 3. Demonstration of strength. The Imperial Council was divided. Half the members wanted to destroy the human ship immediately. The other half wanted to learn more. They argued for 16 hours straight while Admiral Kevron stood silently, waiting for them to make a decision. Finally, Council Leader Vexter raised his hand for silence. Admiral Kevron, you've fought more battles than anyone in this room. What is your recommendation? Kevron chose his words carefully. The humans claim to have advanced technology. They claim to know about a threat we cannot see, but we only have their words. I propose a test. What kind of test? Vexter asked. A combat demonstration. If their ship is truly as advanced as they claim, they should be able to prove it. We send our finest warship against theirs in a simulated battle. No live weapons, only targeting systems and defensive maneuvers. If they're really superior, they'll prove it. If they're bluffing, we'll know. A council member stood up. And if they fail, then we destroy them, Kevron said coldly. One ship, no matter how large, cannot stand against our entire fleet. The council voted. The motion passed. Admiral Kevron returned to his flagship and opened a channel to the Perseverance. Captain Santos appeared on the screen, looking tired but alert. Captain Santos, the Empire has a proposal. We need proof of your capabilities. Will you engage in a simulated combat exercise against our flagship? Santos raised an eyebrow. You want to fight us? I want to see what you can do, Kevron replied honestly. No real weapons. Only targeting systems and shields. First ship to land 5 killing shots wins. Are you willing? Santos was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Admiral, I appreciate your honesty. Yes, we accept. When do you want to begin? Immediately. 20 minutes later, both ships moved into position. The entire Imperial Second Fleet watched from a safe distance. Every officer had their eyes glued to their screens. This would be the first time in 12,000 years that anyone saw human military technology in action. The Imperial Fist was magnificent. 5 kilometers of armor plating, energy shields, and weapons systems. It had been the flagship of the Imperial fleet for 300 years. Every major battle, every important campaign, the Imperial Fist had been there. It represented the peak of Imperial engineering. The Perseverance dwarfed it. But size didn't always mean victory. Kevron had defeated larger enemies before. He trusted his crew, his ship, and his experience. All stations report ready, his tactical officer announced. Begin the exercise, Kevron ordered. The Imperial Fist moved first. It was fast for a ship its size, accelerating quickly. Kevron's strategy was simple. Use speed and weapons range to keep the larger human. Ship at a distance while landing targeting shots. Fire targeting lasers. Pattern 7, Kevron commanded. 20 red laser beams shot toward the Perseverance. They were non-lethal, but would register as hits on sensors. If they connected, they would count as successful weapon strikes. But the human ship wasn't there anymore. What? Kevron's tactical officer stared at his screen in confusion. Sir, the target moved, but our sensors never detected acceleration. On the view screen, the Perseverance had shifted position 300 meters to the left. It had moved faster than Imperial sensors could track. Again, Kevron ordered. Fire at new position. The Imperial fist fired 20 more targeting beams. Again, the Perseverance moved, this time spiraling upward in a maneuver that should have been impossible for a ship that size. Sir, they're predicting our firing solutions, the tactical officer said, his voice shaking. They're moving before we fire. Kevron's eyes narrowed. Predictive AI, he had heard theories about such systems, but no one had successfully built one. The processing power required was enormous. Yet somehow, the humans had done it. Switch to random firing patterns, Kevron ordered. Manual targeting. Human gunners, not computers. Imperial fists, weapons crews took manual control. They fired in unpredictable sequences, trying to catch the Perseverance off guard. It didn't work. The human ship dodged every shot. It moved like a dancer, graceful and precise despite its massive size. Its engines showed no strain, no signs of overheating. Whatever power source they were using, it was far beyond Imperial fusion reactors. Sir, we have 0 hits, the tactical officer reported. 23 attempts, 0 success. Admiral Kevron felt frustration building. Activate defensive pattern Theta. Move us closer. The Imperial fist adjusted its position, trying to close the distance. If they couldn't hit from range, they'd get close enough that dodging became impossible. Then the Perseverance moved toward them. Not away. Toward them. Sir, they're approaching, the sensor officer warned. Closing to 2,000 meters. All batteries ready, Kevron ordered. At this range, even the Perseverance couldn't dodge. Fire. Every targeting laser on the Imperial fist fired at once. Dozens of beams converged on the human ship. There was no way to avoid them all, except the Perseverance didn't try to dodge. Instead, a shimmering field appeared around its hull. The targeting beams hit the field and scattered harmlessly in all directions. Energy shield, the tactical officer shouted. But that's not standard shield technology. It's something else. The energy signature is completely different. Before Kevron could respond, the Perseverance made its move. Blue pulses of energy shot from the human ship. They weren't weapons. They were electromagnetic bursts, precisely targeted. Each pulse hit a different weapon system on the Imperial fist. Alarms blared across the flagship's bridge. Weapons Bay 1 offline. Bay 2 offline. Bay 3 offline. Reports flooded in from every weapons station. The human ship was systematically disabling every single weapon on the Imperial fist without firing a single damaging shot. Within 90 seconds, the Imperial fist was completely disarmed. Every weapon system was dead. The ship could still move, but it couldn't fight. Simulation over. Captain Santos's voice came through the communication system. 5 theoretical kills achieved. Your weapon systems will reboot in 5 minutes, Admiral. No permanent damage. The bridge of the Imperial fist was silent. Every officer stared at their screens in disbelief. They had just witnessed their most powerful warship completely neutralized in less than 2 minutes. Admiral, Kevron sat back in his command chair. He felt no anger, only a cold realization. If this had been a real battle, his ship and everyone on it would be dead. And the Perseverance hadn't even used actual weapons. Admiral Captain Santos appeared on the view screen. I took no pleasure in that demonstration, but you needed to see the truth. We've had 12,000 years to innovate while you maintained an empire. We focused everything on survival and advancement. Your empire is powerful, but it's stagnant. You haven't needed to innovate because you had no real competition. Kevron nodded slowly. I believe you now, Captain. About your technology. But what about this Vex threat? Can you prove that? Santos's expression turned grim. I was hoping you wouldn't ask. But yes, I can prove it. I've been broadcasting data to your Imperial command for the past hour. Check your long-range sensors. Look at Sector 447, Colony Planet Designation Frontier 7. Kevron's communication officer quickly accessed Imperial networks. His scales went pale. Admiral, there's an emergency broadcast from Frontier 7. The colony went dark 2 hours ago. Scout ships were sent to investigate. And, Kevron demanded. The officer's hand shook as he brought up the scout ship's final transmission. The view screen showed images that made everyone on the bridge feel sick. Frontier 7 had been a mining colony. 50,000 Imperial citizens lived there. The planet had forests, oceans, and 3 major cities. Now it was covered in biomechanical structures. Black and gray organic metal spread across the entire surface like a disease. The cities were gone, absorbed into massive hive structures. And moving between those structures were ships. Thousands of them. They looked like insects made of metal and flesh, with weapons that pulsed with green energy. The final image showed one of the creatures. Up close before the scout ship was destroyed, it had no eyes, only sensors. Its hull was covered in both armor plating and what looked like living tissue. In its claws, it held pieces of Imperial ships, absorbing them into its body. The transmission ended with a simple message: they're everywhere. Send help. Send, then static. Admiral Kevron stared at the screen. 50,000 people. Gone. Absorbed by creatures that shouldn't exist. He looked at Captain Santos. How long do we have? Based on their reproduction rate? 6 months before they've built enough ships to attack major Imperial worlds? Maybe less. Kevron made his decision. Council Leader Vexter, this is Admiral Kevron. I'm formally recommending full alliance with humanity. We're out of time for debates and politics. This is a matter of survival. There was a long pause. Then Vexter's voice came through, sounding older and more tired than Kevron had ever heard. Recommendation accepted, Admiral. Do whatever is necessary. Humanity has our authorization to enter Imperial space. May the ancient gods help us all. Captain Santos nodded with respect. Thank you, Admiral. We'll begin coordinating immediately. I'm transmitting our weapons technology to your engineers. But I need to be honest with you about something. What? The Perseverance isn't alone. We have 11 more ships just like her, each with their own captain and crew. Together we might have a chance. But Admiral, this is going to be the hardest fight either of our civilizations has ever faced. Admiral Kevron looked at the images of the destroyed colony one more time. Then he looked at the massive human dreadnought that had just proven its superiority. Then we'd better get started, he said. Imperial Command panicked. Part 4. Unlikely Alliance. The Imperial Command building had never been so busy. Officers from a dozen different species rushed through corridors carrying data tablets and tactical reports. Emergency meetings happened every hour. The entire Empire was mobilizing for war. But the biggest change was on the main strategy floor. For the first time in Imperial history, humans walked freely through the building. Admiral Kevron watched from his office window as captain. Santos and her officers set up equipment in the war room. They moved with quiet efficiency, connecting their systems to Imperial networks. Some Imperial officers watched them with suspicion, others with curiosity, a few with outright fear. They're different from what I expected, a voice said behind Kevron. He turned to see historian Zelmar standing in the doorway. The old scholar looked tired but interested. Different how? Kevron asked. The old records described humans as violent and unpredictable. But look at them. Zelmar gestured toward the war room. They're calm, professional, focused. They act like experienced soldiers, not ancient enemies. 12,000 years changes people, Kevron said quietly. Maybe it changed them. Or maybe our ancestors lied about what they were really like. Down in the war room, Captain Santos stood before a massive holographic display. Surrounding her were Admiral Kevron, Council Leader Vexter, and 30 senior Imperial officers. The atmosphere was tense, but professional. Thank you for your cooperation, Santos began. I know trust doesn't come easily after our history, but we're going to need to trust each other if we want to survive. She activated the hologram, showing a detailed map of the affected sectors. Red dots marked Vex sightings. There were already 15 colonies that had gone silent. The Vex spread like a disease, Santos explained. They land on a planet, consume all biological and technological resources, then use those resources to build more ships. Each planet they take makes them stronger. An Imperial general spoke up. We've sent battle groups to 3 of the affected colonies. They engaged Vex forces and he hesitated. The results were not good. What happened? Santos asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. Our weapons barely damaged them. Their whole armor adapts to whatever hits it. After the first few shots, our lasers became ineffective. Our missiles were intercepted by their biomechanical defense systems. We lost 12 ships before we retreated. Santos nodded grimly. We've fought them before in small skirmishes. They're adaptive. Traditional weapons don't work well because they learn too quickly. That's why we developed alternative approaches. She touched a control and new images appeared. They showed weapons that looked strange to Imperial eyes. Long railguns, glowing plasma chambers, and crystalline devices that pulsed with energy. Kinetic railguns, Santos pointed to the first image. Simple physics. Metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. The Vex can't adapt to pure kinetic force. Plasma disruptors that burn hot enough to overwhelm their regenerative capabilities before they can adapt. And quantum torpedoes that phase through their armor before exploding inside their ships. Can you build enough of these weapons for our fleet? Kevron asked. We can share the designs, but you'll need to manufacture them yourselves. We don't have the industrial capacity to arm your entire fleet. But if we combine our technology with your manufacturing infrastructure, we can equip every ship within 3 months. We don't have 3 months, Vexer interrupted. You said we had 6 months total. If we spend 3 months building weapons, that leaves only 3 months to fight. I know, Santa said. That's why we're going to hold the line while you prepare. The Perseverance and our sister ships will engage Vex forces at the border. We'll buy you time. Imperial officer stood up. 12 ships against an entire swarm. That's suicide. Santos smiled without humor. Then it's a good thing humans are stubborn about dying. The meeting continued for 6 more hours. They divided responsibilities, shared intelligence, and planned joint operations. It was messy and complicated. 2 civilizations that didn't trust each other, trying to work together against impossible odds, but slowly. It started working. Junior analyst Lyra found herself assigned to work with a human engineer named Marcus Chen. He was young, probably close to her age, with dark hair and friendly eyes. At first, she was nervous, but Marcus was patient and helpful. Your Imperial sensors are actually really impressive, Marcus said as they reviewed technical specifications. The range and accuracy are better than some of our older models. But the processing speed is slow. If we modify the core processors with our quantum algorithms, you could track twice as many targets. How did humans develop quantum processing? Lyra asked. Our scientists have been trying for centuries. Marcus thought for a moment. Honestly, necessity. When you're hiding in deep space with limited resources, you learn to innovate or die. Each human colony developed independently for thousands of years. We couldn't share resources easily, so every colony specialized in different technologies. That sounds lonely, Lyra said quietly. It was, Marcus admitted. My colony was built inside a hollow asteroid. We had 50,000 people and spent generations just surviving. We didn't see a real sun until I was 15 years old, but that isolation forced us to be creative. We had to solve problems in new ways because we couldn't rely on anyone else. Lyra looked at him with new understanding. And now you're here helping the Empire that tried to destroy you. Because holding grudges won't stop the Vex, Marcus said simply. Survival first. Old wounds later? Maybe never, if we're lucky. Similar conversations happened throughout the Joint Command. Humans and Imperials working side by side, slowly learning about each other. Meanwhile, historian Zelmar spent days in the deep archives, searching through forbidden records. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about Imperial history. He called Admiral Kavran to his research chamber late one night. The old historian looked excited and sad at the same time. "I found the original war reports," Zelmar said, pulling up ancient documents. "The unedited versions that were sealed away." "Admiral, the Empire lied to its own people." "What do you mean?" "Humanity wasn't defeated in the war. They chose to leave. Look at this." Zelmar showed Kevron a document dated 12,000 years ago. It was a peace proposal from the human government to the early Empire. The proposal offered compromise. Humans would withdraw from contested territories. They would stop interfering with Imperial expansion. But in exchange, they wanted to remain independent. They wanted to keep their freedom, their governments, their way of life. The Empire refused, Zelmar continued. The Emperor at that time saw any independent civilization as a threat, so he ordered complete destruction. But humans were smarter than he realized. They evacuated their homeworlds in secret, taking their ships and technology with them. When the Imperial fleet arrived, they found empty planets. They burned them anyway, just to be sure. Then they declared victory and sealed the records so no one would know humans had escaped. Kevron felt something break inside him. His empire, the civilization he had served his entire life, was built on a lie. Built on the attempted genocide of a species whose only crime was wanting freedom. "Why show me this?" he asked quietly. "Because if we survive this war, the Empire needs to change," Zelmar said firmly. "We can't keep conquering and controlling. We need to learn to coexist. To respect others. Otherwise, we're no better than the Vex, consuming everything we touch." Before Kevron could respond, alarms blared throughout the building. He rushed to the war room, where Captain Santos was already coordinating with her ships. "What's happening?" Kevron demanded. Santos pointed to the hologram. A new red dot had appeared, much larger than the others. A Vex hive ship just emerged from deep space. "It's massive, Admiral. 200 kilometers in diameter, and it's heading straight for the Imperial homeworld." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Vex weren't just attacking border colonies anymore. They were going for the heart of the Empire. "How long until it arrives?" Vexler asked, his voice shaking. 72 hours at current speed," Santos replied. "Can we stop it?" Santos looked at the massive hive ship on the display. Its size dwarfed anything either civilization had ever built. It was covered in weapons and biomechanical armor. Around it swarmed thousands of smaller Vex ships, protecting it like antibodies protecting a disease. "I don't know," Santos said honestly, "but we're going to try. Every human ship is moving to intercept. We'll need your entire fleet as well, Admiral. Everything you have. This is going to be the biggest battle in recorded history." Admiral Kevron looked around the war room. At Imperial officers who had served with him for decades, at human engineers who had been enemies a week ago, at historians, scientists, and soldiers from a dozen different species all standing together. "Then we mobilize everything," he said firmly. "Captain Santos, coordinate with my fleet commanders. Historian Zelmar, I want civilian evacuations started immediately. This is no longer just about fighting. This is about saving every life we can." As orders flew and people rushed to their stations, Kevron allowed himself one moment of doubt. Could they really stop something that large? Something that powerful? He looked at Captain Santos. She was calm, focused, already planning the battle. Humanity had survived 12,000 years hiding in the darkness. They had outlasted an empire's attempt to destroy them. They had built ships and weapons that shouldn't exist. If anyone knew how to survive impossible odds, it was humans. "We're going to need a miracle," Kevron said quietly. Santos heard him and smiled grimly. "Then it's a good thing humans specialize in those." Imperial Command panicked. Part 5. The price of survival. The Imperial homeworld had never seen anything like it. Massive transport ships filled the sky, carrying civilians to underground shelters. Families clutched their belongings, children cried, and elderly citizens looked up at the stars with fear. Everyone knew what was coming. In orbit above the planet, the combined human Imperial fleet assembled. It was the largest gathering of military forces in galactic history. Over 3,000 Imperial warships, from massive battleships to small fighters, and beside them, 12 human dreadnoughts. Each one a testament to 12,000 years of hidden innovation. Admiral Kevron stood on the bridge of the Imperial Fist. His flagship had been repaired and upgraded with human technology. New weapons lined its hull. New shields protected it, but he knew it might not be enough. "Fleet status report," he ordered. His tactical officer read from his screen. All Imperial vessels in position. Human dreadnoughts formed into defensive formation Alpha. Weapons hot. Shields at maximum. "Sir, we're as ready as we're going to be." Kevron nodded. He opened a channel to Captain Santos aboard the Perseverance. "Captain, your status?" Santos appeared on screen. Her bridge was busy with activity, but she looked calm. "All human ships ready, Admiral. We've shared our tactical plans with your commanders. Everyone knows their role." Kivron paused. "Captain, I want you to know something. Whatever happens today, I'm grateful that humanity revealed themselves. You could have stayed hidden. Let the Vex destroy us. Instead, you chose to help." Santos smiled sadly. "Admiral, we learned something during our 12,000 years in hiding. Isolation keeps you alive, but it doesn't give you a life worth living. We were tired of hiding, tired of watching from the shadows. Maybe the Vex are terrible, but they gave us a reason to come home." Before Kevron could respond, the sensor officer shouted, "Contact. The hive ship is dropping out of faster-than-light travel." On every screen throughout the fleet, the Vex hive ship appeared. It was even more horrifying up close. 200 kilometers of biomechanical horror, its surface crawling with weapons and organic machinery. It looked like a planet-sized tumor, alive and hungry, and around it were ships. Thousands upon thousands of Vex fighters and cruisers, each one ready to kill. "My God," someone whispered on the bridge. Admiral Kevron forced himself to stay calm. "All ships hold formation. Wait for my command." The Vex hive ship moved toward the Imperial homeworld slowly, like a predator confident in its power. Its escort ships spread out in attack formations. Captain Santos's voice came through on the fleet-wide channel. "All forces, this is Captain Santos. The Vex are strong, but they have a weakness. They're a hive intelligence. Everything connects back to that ship. If we can destroy their central intelligence, the entire swarm loses coordination. That's our target," an Imperial Admiral's voice responded. "That ship has shields and armor thicker than a planet's crust. How do we even damage it?" Santos was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with meaning. "The Perseverance and her sister ships carry experimental weapons called Genesis bombs. They can rewrite matter at a quantum level, turning living tissue into inert compounds. But there's a problem. To use them effectively, a ship needs to penetrate deep inside the hive ship's defensive perimeter, past its shields, past its weapons, almost to its core." "Suicide," the Imperial Admiral said. "Yes," Santos agreed. "But it's the only way. And I'm volunteering the Perseverance for the mission." "No." Admiral Kevron's voice was firm. "If anyone is going on a suicide mission, it should be an Imperial ship. Your people have already sacrificed enough. With respect, Admiral, your ships can't get past those defenses. We have the speed and shields to possibly make it through." "Then the Imperial Fist goes with you," Kevron said. "You'll need support. Someone to draw fire and clear a path." "Admiral, that's not a request, Captain. We do this together or not at all." There was a long silence. Then Santos's voice came back, softer than before. "Understood, Admiral. Together." The Vex made the first move. Their ships surged forward like a wave, thousands of them screaming toward the Allied fleet. Green energy weapons lit up space as the battle began. Imperial ships opened fire with their new human-designed weapons. Rayogon slugs punched through Vex armor. Plasma bursts turned biomechanical ships into burning debris. The humans had taught them well, but the Vex were endless. For every ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. They swarmed around Imperial vessels, tearing into them with claws and weapons. Ships on both sides exploded in brilliant flashes of light. All ships, maintain formation. Kavron ordered. Human dreadnoughts, begin your attack run. The 12 human ships moved forward as one. They were magnificent and terrible, their weapons firing in perfect coordination. They carved a path through the Vex, swarmed like a blade through flesh. The Perseverance led the way with the Imperial fist close behind. They dodged, weaved, and fought their way toward the hive ship. Vex fighters swarmed around them, but the human point defense systems shot them down by the hundreds. Distance to target, 5,000 kilometers, the tactical officer reported. Then the hive ship opened fire. Massive bioorganic cannons emerged from its surface. They fired beams of green energy so powerful they could cut through a planet. One beam hit an Imperial cruiser that got too close. The ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. Ah! Evasive maneuvers. Kevron shouted. The Imperial fist twisted and turned, its engines straining. Another beam missed them by meters. The ship's shields flared as smaller Vex weapons struck it repeatedly. Hull breach on Deck 7. Shields at 60%. Damage reports flooded in. Beside them, the Perseverance was taking damage too. But Captain Santos pushed forward, her ship's advanced shields holding against attacks that would have destroyed lesser vessels. Distance to target, 3,000 kilometers? More Imperial ships died trying to protect them. Kevron watched as brave crews sacrificed themselves, putting their ships between the Perseverance and enemy fire. Each loss felt like a knife to his heart. Admiral, we're not going to make it, his tactical officer said quietly. The damage is too severe. Kevron looked at his screens. The officer was right. The Imperial fist's engines were failing. Its shields were nearly gone. They were less than 2,000 kilometers from the target. But they couldn't go further. He opened a channel to the Perseverance. Captain Santos, the Imperial fist is done. But you can still make it. Go now, while we draw their fire. Admiral, no, that's an order, Captain. Kevron turned to his crew. All hands, this is the Admiral. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. You have 2 minutes. His officers stared at him in shock. Sir, what about you? Kevron smiled. It was the first genuine smile he'd felt in weeks. I'm staying. Someone needs to pilot this ship. Someone needs to buy Captain Santos the time she needs. Admiral, go! That's an order. His crew hesitated, then began rushing to the escape pods. Within 90 seconds, the bridge was empty, except for Kevron. He sat in his command chair, hands on the manual controls, and looked at his beautiful ship one last time. Old friend, he said softly to the Imperial fist, let's make our last flight count. He pushed the engines to maximum, far beyond safe limits. The ship screamed forward directly at the hive ship. Every weapon that still functioned fired at once. Kevron wasn't trying to destroy the enemy. He was trying to get their attention, and it worked. The hive ship's weapons all turned toward the Imperial fist. Dozens of energy beams converged on the dying flagship, but those weapons weren't targeting the Perseverance anymore. Captain Santos saw her opening. All power to engines. We're going in. The Perseverance shot forward like a missile. It slipped past the hive ship's outer defenses, through gaps in its weapons coverage. Vex fighters tried to intercept, but they were too slow. Behind them, the Imperial fist took hit after hit. The ship was coming apart, but Kevron kept it moving forward. Through the view screen, he could see the hive ship's hull growing larger and larger. For the Empire, he whispered, and for humanity. The Imperial fist crashed into the hive ship's surface at full speed. The explosion was like a small star being born. Tearing a massive hole in the enemy's armor, the Perseverance flew through that hole, inside. Was nightmare made real. Organic corridors pulsed with life. Biomechanical systems worked to repair damage. It was like flying through the body of a living creature. Captain, we're at the central chamber, Santos's tactical officer reported. In front of them was the hive ship's core. A massive organic brain, 50 meters across, pulsing with green light. This was the intelligence controlling everything. This was the target. Activate the Genesis bomb. Santos ordered quietly. Her weapons officer's hands shook as he armed the device. Bomb armed. Captain, once we activate it, we have 30 seconds before detonation. That's not enough time to escape. Santos looked at her crew. Young people from different human colonies, all volunteers, all heroes. I know. But if we don't do this, billions die. Our families, our friends, everyone. She thought about Admiral Kavran, who had just given his life for people who were once his enemies. She thought about Marcus and Lyra and all the others learning to work together. Fire the bomb, she ordered. The Genesis bomb shot forward, embedding itself deep in the organic brain. The timer started counting down, 30 seconds. But then something unexpected happened. The ship shook, not from weapons, but from a docking clamp. Someone had attached to their hull. Captain, we have boarders. The tactical officer shouted. Wait there. They're human. It's the Dreadnought Unity. They're attaching an emergency tow cable. On the screen, Captain Santos saw another human ship. It must have followed them in without orders. Unity, what are you doing? Santos demanded. Saving your stubborn life, Maria, a familiar voice responded. It was Captain James Rodriguez, commander of another colony ship. That fancy bomb doesn't have to kill you. We're pulling you out. 15 seconds. The Unity's engine screamed as it pulled the Perseverance backward. They shot back through the corridors of the hive ship. Racing against time. 10 seconds, 5 seconds. They cleared the outer hull just as the Genesis bomb detonated. The explosion wasn't loud or bright. It was quiet and terrible. The hive ship's organic core simply stopped being alive. The quantum reaction spread through every system, turning living tissue into dead matter. The massive vessel went dark and cold, and throughout space, every Vex ship suddenly lost coordination. They stopped moving in formation. They stopped adapting. They became easy targets. The combined fleet tore through them in minutes. When the battle ended, only silence remained. 3,000 ships had become 1,700. Tens of thousands were dead. But they had one. Captain Santos stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, looking at the dead hive ship floating in space. She thought about Admiral Kavran and all the others who hadn't made it back. 2 weeks later, there was a ceremony. The Empire held a memorial for everyone who had died in the battle. Captain Santos spoke about Admiral Kavran, about his courage and sacrifice. Council leader Vexter gave a speech too. He publicly admitted the Empire's historical crimes against humanity. He apologized for the attempted genocide 12,000 years ago, and he offered humanity full alliance, status not as subjects but as equals. Captain Santos accepted, but she also made clear that humanity would maintain their independence. They would be allies, not part of the Empire. Partners, not subjects. In the weeks that followed, reconstruction began. Human engineers and Imperial workers rebuilt damaged stations together. Marcus and Lyra's friendship became a symbol of the new cooperation. One evening, Captain Santos stood in an observation deck, looking at the stars. Captain Rodriguez joined her, so he said, "Was it worth it? Coming out of hiding?" Santos thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the battles, the losses, but also the friendships, the cooperation, the hope for something better, she said finally. We were surviving in hiding. Now we're living. That's worth the risk. Far across the galaxy, in hidden colonies that had watched the battle from afar, other humans began preparing. They had seen what happened. They had seen the Empire change. They had seen hope. And slowly, one by one, they started coming home. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had returned. And they brought with them the lesson they'd learned in 12,000 years of isolation. Survival is important. But it's what you do with that survival that gives life meaning. Together, humans and the Empire would face whatever came next. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in the vast adventure of existence. And somewhere in space, Admiral Kavran's sacrifice was remembered. Not just as a military victory, but as the moment when an old warrior learned that honor wasn't about following orders, It was about doing what was right, even when it cost everything. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in 12,000 years, it was a future worth fighting for.